Right, good evening everybody. I think our technical hitches have now been unhitched, or whatever you do with them, I don't know. Okay, and so we'll begin the meeting. Now, you're perfectly entitled to stand up if you want to, or you can sit down all the way through. But we'll stand up at the beginning because I want to say good evening to our visitors. This is the first time we've had an audience for a long time. Just be aware, if there's a buzz, yeah. Again, technology. Is that it? Is it gone? Yeah. Oh, good. Well, good evening, everybody. The first time we've been like this for a while. It's so nice to see you all, and we're all fit and well. Thank you very much for coming. And I hope we have a peaceful and informative and very decisive meeting. Now, please remain standing whilst David Whitehouse from St Andrews will lead us in prayer.
Good evening, folks. One of the favourite verses of the Bible is this: seek the Lord while he may be found and call on him while he is near. The call to turn for wisdom to the one whose thoughts are above our thoughts, and to seek the mercy of the one who promises to freely pardon. So let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this borough and the towns and communities it represents. We pray for our business community, our education providers, our emergency and social services, and our healthcare workers. We give thanks for the many people who are giving time, serving voluntarily, caring for individuals, and making life richer for all. Tonight, we pray for this council and for the councillors, that they may be granted discernment, compassion, and courage, that they may promote justice for all and be the voice of those who cannot speak for themselves. We think tonight particularly of the family and friends of Councillor Christine Melia, who passed away recently. Church's prayer for this week seems appropriate. O Lord, we beseech you mercifully to hear the prayers of your people who call upon you, and grant that they may both perceive and know what things they ought to do, and also may have grace and power faithfully to fulfill them. Through Jesus Christ, your Son, our Lord, who is alive and reigns with you, in the unity of the Holy Spirit, one God, now and forever. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, David. And now it's another sad occasion. We will have a minute's silence, friend and colleague, Christine Melia. Thank you, everybody. Would you like to please sit down? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I have a carer who makes sure I don't fall off my chair. Isn't that kind? We could always do one of those. I could do with them at home as well. It's been a very sad occurrence that Chris, our friend, died, and I'm sure that there are people within the meeting who would like to say a few words, and I think Paul, and then thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Mayor. I truly cannot believe I'm stood speaking about here and a passing. Absolutely devastated, as we all are, and quite shocked at the speed. I mean, really, really shocked at the speed. And with the pandemic, Christine's been really busy in Bamber Bridge and the ward, and she was only taken ill literally a few months ago, and we thought it was a gallbladder to start with, and then one thing led to another, and she passed away. And Christine, as you all know, had only been on the council for just over 2 years. And I still remember back to May 2019 when she was absolutely elated to be elected as the councillor for Bamber Bridge East. And we were elated to have her with us because fundamentally, like most councillors, she just wanted to do stuff for a community. She wanted to represent a community and do stuff for a community. And she had quite strong political views as well, Christine, and you wouldn't have known that genuinely when you were having dialogue with her, because she was always up for the debate and always up for a chat. And it wasn't until I met her dog for the first time that I realised where she actually was in the Labour Party, because the dog was called Corbyn. And so you take that right, Christine's got quite strong views. Obviously, her funeral's on Tuesday, Mayor. We send all our love and wishes to her partner, Peter, and may she rest in peace. She was a wonderful lady with a wonderful heart and a wonderful smile. Thank you.
Else want to say anything? Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Mayor. It is with much sadness that we're having to speak at this meeting tonight about our colleague Christine. I've not been a member of this council for a very long, she'd only been a member for a very short period of time, but she was always well respected and always very friendly and thoughtful and considerate to all members of the committees that she was served in. And the Conservative group send all our thoughts and condolences to her family, friends and colleagues at this very sad time for us all.
I'm sorry, it should have been councillor, but I think occasionally we can drop the councillors, can't we? Thank you. Does anybody else want to say anything? Yes, David.
Thank you, Mayor. I first met Christine when she was actually demonstrating on the flag market in Newcastle, and she was wearing a T-shirt which made reference to Corbyn and Brexit, and after I'd roundly insulted it, I was dragged away. And then she was elected to the council, and fortuitously she couldn't remember who I was. But following that, I did get to know her relatively well. We socialised together at mayoral functions, and she did tell me that she was a great fan of punk rock. And I did say that I would bring a couple of boxes from my record collection of punk singles, and she could work her way through them. And then very sadly, COVID set in and I never got the opportunity to do it. So perhaps the next time I go through those boxes and I pick out a couple of singles, I'll play those and fondly remember her.
Anybody else? Yes, Kayla.
Yes, thanks, Matt. I've known Christine quite a bit longer than most of you, and I'll give you a measure of the lady. 4.5 years ago, whilst recovering from a major cancer operation, I was at home and there was a knock on my door and I thought it was the district nurse. So I hobbled to the door with all my energy, opened it, and there's this big beaming smile stood at my front door, and it was Christine. To which I replied, "Yes, what do you want?" To which she replied, "I'm a member of the local Labour Party." I said, "So am I, goodbye," and shut the door. She knocked again and she said, "I've just come to see how you are and if you need anything." That is the measure of our friend and colleague, Christine Melia. Humble, an absolute humanist, and she just wanted the best for her residents. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anybody else? Yes, Chris.
She laughed easily. She cared for the community. She bought clothes for those who needed them. She supported those who needed food. She was my friend.
Anybody else? Thank you. On to the meeting now. I'll start with some of the domestic arrangements for the meeting. Now, due to the regulations surrounding voting, only those members physically present are able to vote. Sorry about those at home, but you've got to be here. However, if members dialing in via Teams would like to contribute to the debate, please use the raise hand function on your iPad. If you use one of our communal microphones, this applies to people in the building, please use the cleaning materials provided after you've used it. That probably applies to the members of the residents. Yes? Okay. Mobile devices, please ensure all electronic devices and equipment is either on silent mode or switched off to minimise interruption. And the meeting is being live streamed during the open session for members of the public to watch. So we're on YouTube, aren't we now? Yeah, right. Okay. You could turn on my bits of paper, obviously, I know what I'm doing. Right. Apologies for absence. Have we got any apologies? Anybody? No?
We've got Councillor Carol Chisholm and Councillor Gareth Watson who are joining us from home over Teams.
Councillor Will Adams, who's been called in as an emergency to the COVID ward to support.
Right. Oh dear. I'm going to say oh dear.
For Councillor Caroline Moon, she's been unavoidably detained by some issues at work, so she might join us later.
She might come later.
Yes.
Fine, thank you. Declarations of interest. Members are reminded their responsibility to declare any pecuniary interest in respect to matters contained within the agenda. Are there any declarations of interest? No, good. Okay. The minutes of the meeting on Wednesday, the 21st of July. Do we accept? It's for decision. Can I please ask the leader of the council to move that the minutes are approved?
Yeah, they're moved, Mayor.
Is that seconded? Thanks, Councillor Titherington. Are there any points of accuracy that need anybody? No? No? Nothing. Okay. Any questions from the minutes? No? Good. Right, now, it's my... Sorry, darling. Chris just needs to get everybody to... Oh, yeah, we'll have better vote, haven't we? I'm sorry, I do apologise. Right.
Thank you, councillors. In the absence of any questions, are there any challenges to the accuracy of the minutes? In the absence of any challenges, I think they can be passed as a true record.
Okay, thank you, everybody. And now it's my mayor's announcements. As you can see, beautifully written on a scrap of paper. As you are aware, the first 9 months of me being the mayor was virtual. I was on the virtual scene and did lots and lots and lots of stuff. But since the last council meeting, I've been inundated with going places and doing things and visiting things and all sorts of stuff. In fact, I've run out of clothes and I'm going to have to start doing some ironing, which, anyway, beside the point. So on my announcements, I want to first of all announce that my first sort of fundraising thing will be an afternoon tea on the 15th of October, and it's at the Rococo Cafe. So, and it's only 10 quid, so it's a cheap do. So you can all afford it because you all get plenty of money paid. I know you all get paid for being a councillor. You can afford 10 quid. So that's on the 15th, and that's afternoon tea. So that will be lovely. But some of the things I've been doing, you'll all remember that the children wrote stories and they had a book. Now they've all got their books now, and that's lovely. And some of them came to the garden party, and they thought it was wonderful having a photograph taken with me. I don't know why, but there you go. And I've done visits to the hospice, to Age Concern, to the Veterans Cafe. Can I recommend the sausage butties at the Veterans Cafe? And they do a full English as well. So I suggest you, one Saturday morning, if you've nothing to do, get down there and have a visit. I've been to the Broadfield Arms, and I've done Farrington Fun Day, and I've done all sorts of fun things in fields. I don't know how you find that, Harry? You spent a lot of time in a field doing fun things, yes. So fun things in a field, put whatever you want on that. And then then he was the mayor for a bit, yeah. I've taken over now. So you can, I love that because you don't know what I've been doing now, do you? I've opened 2 buildings, one at Hurst Grange. I recommend that as a visit. That's lovely, and they've got a nice cafe there as well. And Much Hool, that's 2 ribbons I cut. I made speeches, I now declare this ship ready for sailing or whatever. I've been to the Archbishop of Liverpool's to a soiree. That was a bit posh. I went to St Ambrose to welcome in the new vicar. I've been to 2 banquets. It's cost me a fortune, this. And there's lots of things in the diary for the next month. But one of the things that's happened is that I was having lunch with my friend, and this chap comes in and says, "Hello, Mrs. Mayor." And I said, "I don't know him. He's some strange man talking to me." And I said, "How do you know I'm the mayor?" And he said, "I've seen you on Facebook." So I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. So there you are, mayor's announcements. That's me, and that's what I've been doing. And now I have moved one of the agenda items forward, and it's agenda item 11. Okay, can you just look in your I've moved it forward because I am aware that we have members of the public here who are keen to ask questions, etc. So I moved it forward so they don't have to hang about until, forever. I know what it's like sitting there and waiting for your turn, so we've moved it forward. So can you go to item 11 on your agenda, please? Right. Who's doing this report? Anybody? Yep. Hey? Who's doing the report? Councillor Flannery. Right, okay. Right, item 11 on the agenda is the caravan site licensing, a fit and proper test, okay? And this item is for decision. And can I please ask the Chair of Licensing and Public Safety Committee, Councillor James Flannery, to present his report. Where's James? Yes, thank you, James.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, colleagues, officers and residents. I think it's appropriate that we read this out in some detail, really, just so people can fully digest what we are doing here tonight. From the 1st of October 2021, it is a statutory requirement to adopt the mobile homes requirement for manager of the site to be fit and proper person. The owners of certain mobile homes, sometimes called park homes, sites within South Ribble, will need to ensure that they or the person who they appoint to manage the site is a fit and proper person. To be sure that the relevant person is a fit and proper person to manage the site and to add them to the register, various checks will be performed and can be found in sections 9 and 10 of the report. If the licensing authority believe that the applicant or their appointee are not fit and proper, with or without conditions, we can refuse to accept that person onto the register. We can apply registration conditions to ensure that the effective management is in place or that any contravention or offence is not repeated. If a site is operated without a relevant person being registered, then the site owner may be committing a criminal offence, and that could lead to prosecution and ultimately removal of the licence to operate the site. The register will be published on the South Ribble Borough Council website. It is proposed that a follow-up report will be taken to the next meeting of the Licensing and Public Safety Committee to obtain approval to consult all interested parties before setting an annual fee for the acceptance onto the Fit and Proper Persons Register. Therefore, members are asked to adopt the mobile homes requirement for the manager of the site to be fit and proper person of England Regulations 2020. Thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Flannery. Sorry. Is this seconded? Thank you, Councillor. Are there any questions from members of the council? Anybody? Sorry? Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'm rising to fully support the recommendations within this report because we have the perfect example within South Ribble down at the Penwortham Residential Park of how perhaps the owner and operator of that park is not necessarily a fit and proper person. And sadly, this would have been far better in place 3 years ago when the current owners of that park, Wildcrest, took over. We have a number of residents here tonight who I'm sure will be able to speak better than I can about the situation that's happened down there. But certainly when it comes to maintenance of the site, when it comes to developing a site where Embankments have been cut away and held back with sleepers, so much so that in some cases they're now bowing outwards towards people's homes, where a green in the centre of that park, beautiful green, has now been built on and caravans just filled, and now they're extending out along Park Road with any space possible to put more and more caravans on and just develop the site to get as much on there as they possibly can. In terms of the maintenance, I'm sure residents will be able to tell you about the lack of lighting and lights that don't work, about fire extinguishers and fire appliances that aren't adequate, about lack of maintenance of the roads, about drainage problems. For 18 months, there was a hole in Park Road outside the entrance to the park where what I can only describe as a cowboy job. A culvert had a drain smashed through it and sat there for 18 months while residents had to suffer it, waiting for adequate repairs to be carried out. With that sort of history, as I say, I have to question whether the owner and operator of that park is really a fit and proper person. And while his starring in a television programme quite recently might have made him out to be some saint, I think anybody who is aware of the conditions and situation on that park would be able to tell you that he is anything but. So it is very unfortunate that we have that situation within our borough, but with the implementation of these regulations, then hopefully that will just be another regulation in our armoury so that we can try and do something to improve the lot of the people who have to suffer what is going on down there. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any? Are there any other questions from members of the council? Yes, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I read it in great detail. In my opinion, it probably should have gone to the licensing committee before it came to council, but I am encouraged to see that any application coming in, if I've got it right, Councillor Flannery, would actually go to the licensing committee anyway for judgment. So I'm encouraged with that. And presumably anything that came in with regard to either the fit and proper person test or, in fact, if somebody transgress some of the onerous rules in there, that would also go to the licensing committee for consideration. If you could confirm that, I'd be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. First of all, I want to endorse what Councillor Alves just said, so well done for saying that. And in response to Councillor Smith, that's absolutely what this is for. What this is for is to give us the tools to be able to prevent. Unfortunately, the residents, as Councillor Alves said, have been through the mire with this. But in future, this type of policy will help us to, and regulation will give us the tools to prevent this from happening again and help us enforce any indiscretions going forward. So yes, it will come to licence and it will be enforced. Thank you.
Any more questions from members of the council? Right. Members of the public, this is your opportunity to ask questions. So please feel free to come to the microphone. Don't be nervous because we're only human. Yeah, just don't worry about us. We're only human, exactly the same as you. Just because we're called councillors doesn't make us posh.
What do I do?
So please just say what you have to say, and we will listen. And can we have your name?
Yeah, can you hear me? Yep. My name's John Fulham. I'm the secretary of the Pavement Residents Association. Obviously, the association's been established for like over 3 years now. And obviously, since we became, a lot of us who live on the site, I must point out, they've lived there prior to Wildcrest coming in under the regime of Mr. Campbell. But when Wildcrest came in December 18, we were all a little bit, well, but to be honest, they've destroyed the park. There's a lot of issues, a lot of development has gone on, a lot of illegal development appears to have gone on. And as for the council saying, yeah, we've got the tools. Well, I'd like to ask that gentleman over there, where have you been? because we've asked the council to come down on numerous occasions. You've never been. The only councillor who's shown any interest in supporting us was Councillor Will Adams. You know, and to help stop things happening again, well, hopefully this will never happen again, because we have to live under the regime of this group of people who we see as far from fit and proper. Even if they did get the fit and proper persons, they're all living from Wildcrest. They don't maintain the park. We've got streetlights which have been out for over 3 years. All it is a light bulb, which then becomes very dangerous for residents of the park. Remember and bear in mind, the majority are over 55. There's some infirm residents. There's some residents who need carers. A perfect example of Wildcrest's approach to people. We had a leak on December the 1st this year. January the 1st, New Year's Day. It was fixed in 4 days, but a byproduct of that leak was there was a water flow issue. Now, they didn't fix it for 8 months. Of that 8 months, 20 park homes had very low pressure. Two park home residents who are a married couple, their boiler broke down, which they had to pay over £300 to get fixed, because Wildcrest were trying to blame residents for 3 months, January, February, March. Your pipes aren't been like it's freezing. They would not listen. They don't listen. The Mobile Homes Act, they're supposed to let us know that works have been carried out. They don't inform us of anything. The mantra of Wildcrest is, you know, every resident counts. Well, I'm afraid they don't. You only count on the 15th of each month when you get the rent. The days either side of that, they don't want to know. They're destroying the park. The infrastructure of the park environmentally has been destroyed. And this is where we need the council, especially licensing, to come down and get this sorted out. Because you imagine a lot of these people here, myself, think we're all retired people. You want to live in the twilight of your lives. But you're having to put up with all this, pardon my French, crap. And it's not right. It's not fair. I'm actually quite emotional about this. It really upsets.
We're all emotional.
We're all emotional. We are. And it shouldn't happen, you know. And even if it's live streaming, they're probably watching this, and I might get a few daggers for it. But that's what it's about. Now, I would like to ask, did you get my synopsis that I put together? I asked Will Adams to pass it on to the people who facilitate this meeting. I know Will's a busy chap, and I understand he's working, and it's a very pressured job he does. But he said he would, so if he's not. Since Wildcrest took over, I've actually written from December when they took over from Campbell's to present day, a synopsis of all the problems we've been having.
You've got it. Yeah.
Who's got it?
Councillor Evans has got one, and Councillor Foster's got one.
Well, could you pass this to every council, because you need to read this.
Yeah, we can get that to everybody.
You know, he blames, like Councillor Howarth mentioned about the fencing, and there's a gentleman here who resides, and this fence is 12 inches from the back of his park home. It's falling. It's all the destruction and the mismanagement of the embankments. It's crazy. It really is crazy. I can go on and on. But what they do, they seem to play the victim role. They actually tried to blame yourselves, the South Ribble Council, for the lack of filling in that hole, which, sorry, Councillor Howarth, was there for 22 months. You know, and it was televised on TV. Oh, I wouldn't put up with this. 22 months. I could go on and on, but I think you're getting the gist of what it's like.
The gist of that.
But we need guarantees as residents, as fee-paying council tax payers, that we're going to get the support of the council in everything you can do to help us overcome these issues. I advise you all to go and have a look at the front of what they've done on the car park. Well, the car park's gone.
The car park's gone now. We've got no green grass.
Sorry. Yeah, the car park's gone. And we understand we're park home residents. We've chose to live this lifestyle. But like I say, we never bought from Wildcrest. A lot of us bought from Campbell's, and we've come under their umbrella. And to be brutally honest, it's so unfair. You know, it's beyond. That's how I feel. But I'd like to ask, when you send the application to Wildcrest for their fit and proper, will we be allowed to know who that is?
Yeah.
I
do want to come back in, mate, if it's okay.
Would that be before or once it's agreed?
Sorry.
Would you know, as soon as you know who that person is, would you be able to let us know who it is?
Yeah, can I, do you want me
Before it's agreed.
Yes, but do you want me to respond to anything else or just that one question for now?
Yeah, please, yeah.
Well, first of all, I don't really feel like I have to justify what I do and where I do and what I do, because that's why I have a role. My role is chair of licensing.
Yeah. But
for your knowledge, I've been down on the park many times with Councillor Martin, who's not been mentioned, who's been there plenty of times. I've been there in the dark with Councillor Adams. I've seen the embankments collapse. So I've been there plenty of times. So, you know, me and you have not come across each other, but I have been down.
Okay, yeah.
Secondly, I've not had any of the, when you said you've been in touch, I've not had anything direct. But if you do, I will pick it up and colleagues will be able to verify. Anyone who contacts me, I phoned. I not just email them back, I phoned them. So I'll make a commitment to you now that I'll be down this week and we'll sit down, we'll go through it. But I am also chair of licensing. So if we can adopt this, you may not think it's the tool's important, but I can assure you it's a very important strategic tool to do something about it.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, that's brilliant. Thanks very much. Would you like me to give you my details?
I'm more than happy, please. And I will phone you tomorrow morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
To some extent, has that answered some of your questions?
Absolutely, yeah.
Good. Yeah. Because it's really important that residents have their say and get a direct answer, and it's the right answer, and it's an answer that helps. It might not solve all your problems, but it will be an answer that helps. And of course, you've never seen that you've got Chairman of Licensing who's already been down and had a look. You've also got that contact now, and other members of the council have got the synopsis, and we will all get a copy of that. Okay. Thank you very much. You're very welcome. Does anybody else want to say anything? Whilst you're here, well, you might as well whilst you're here. They're all going to say, I'm throwing protocol out the window, they're all going to say I'm doing it wrong, but it's my meeting and I'm allowed. I'm the chair. Within reason, shut up. Yes, carry on, Mallow.
My name is Frances Walker, which most of you probably know, and I've lived in Penwitham Residential Park for over 13 years. I bought the park home for a number of reasons. One, I wanted a quiet life. Two, it was in South Ribble, and I paid council tax, because in some park homes, you don't pay council tax and you're at the whim of the owner. And I thought if I did pay council tax, I would have the backing of this council. Things went well under Campbell's Park Homes, I admit, but there should be some updating. I was on holiday when I got an email that Campbell had sold to Wildcrest Parks. That email was from Melvin Gardner. I'd never heard of Wildcrest Parks, but it did not take me long to find out. The internet is littered with information about them and their chairman, Alfie Best. Another neighbour and I decided to start a residents' association. As under the Mobile Homes Act, residents' associations have to be given 28 days notice before any changes. The association was set up, but with the exception of natural gas, this has never happened. Wildcrest tend to go down the lawful development licence route instead of planning. As this is a legal concept, it is very difficult for neighbours, residents, etc. to participate in the process. And in addition of Country File, people in the southwest were complaining on this issue. I appreciate that they own the land, but as residents, we want to be proud of our park and be consulted and communicated without being ignored. I accept that Wildcrest wish to maximise their outlet in the park, but could they do so with the residents? A lot of the residents feel there is nothing we can do to change it, so they haven't come tonight and they feel that why should we bother? I ask and implore this council and councillors to utilise the fit and proper person test in order to redress the balance and sway the scales from the resident to the residents and the council from Wildcrest. Thank you very much.
Francis, do you need a response or has that already been answered? Yes. I think everybody here does, don't they? Are you all content with the fact that Councillor Flannery will be in touch with you and has visited you, and are you reassured by that as a council we will?
The councillors that have helped us up to now.
Yes.
But really, we have been let down by you, I feel.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Okay, well, let's hope this new policy will go some way to make amends. Okay. But
Can I quote you?
you can, yeah. And now, if you want to go, and you can go, or you can sit and wait for the rest of the meeting. And
We do need to vote on this.
but we do need to vote on this. Yes. I think it'll go through anyway. Let's get rid of them. Let's get rid of them. Let's get rid of them. Get rid of them. Bye-bye. No, it'll go through. It'll go through. No, get rid of them. No.
Drop your microphone.
No, it's all right, on the phone. Get rid of it. It can go now. We will be voting on this, councillors. Look how frustrated they'd be if they'd have to wait. They'd be angry. All right. Right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for that. We need to vote on it. Thank you, Councillor Flannery. I think it was a wise move to bring it early doors, because otherwise we would have had some very angry and frustrated residents. So I'm all for a peacemaking course, me. So can we vote on this, please?
Thank you, councillors. There's one recommendation to take a vote on, which is the agreement to adopt the mobile homes requirement for manager of site to be a fit and proper person. England Regulations 2020. Is anyone opposed to adopting those regulations? In the absence of any opposition, I think you can treat that resolution as passed.
Good. Yeah, I'm just getting it right, please. No, getting it. Item 5. This is the report to Cabinet, and this item is for noting. Please can I have the Leader of the Council, Councillor Paul Foster, to present his report of the Cabinet held on the 15th of September. Thanks.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll be very brief. I'm happy to present the report of Cabinet at the meeting held on the 15th of September. This has been, many of the items on here being through the Scrutiny Committee prior as well, and the Cabinet adopted all the recommendations as requested by the Scrutiny Committee. Happy to present, happy to take any questions members may have, Mayor. Thank you.
Seconded.
Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any questions, comments about the Cabinet report? Members of the Council? No? No? Right. Can we note this report then, please? Thank you. Nobody wants to say anything? Brilliant. Right, we're on to item number 6, which is urgent decisions. We're on page 17 to 24. Can I ask the Leader of the Council, Councillor Paul Foster, to present his report?
Thanks, Mayor. As we, as Administration committed to when we commenced leading the Council, we publish at every Cabinet and Council meeting any urgent or executive decisions that are made, and members are presented with the report in front of them tonight. A couple of points for members to note is that the COVID legislation, the special legislation that did actually permit for additional executive powers during the pandemic has now ceased. That ceased in August. So we no longer have those powers. The powers that we do have that are in front of you now are the executive decisions that Cabinet members are permitted to make, and any urgent decisions that the Chief Executive makes, utilising the Constitution in consultation with myself. Very briefly, Mayor, in front of you now from page 19 of the agenda pack forward is there was a voluntary redundancy, there was a planning committee additions because Councillor Amelia was ill, the Welcome Back Fund, approval of the decarbonisation plans for the council buildings, Wood Hall refurbishment, the appointment of the contractor, and the award of the decontamination of the land at Bent Lane, and the additional restrictions grant, the final top-up payments were the decisions that were made, Mayor. Happy to take, and my colleagues are happy to take any questions any members of the council may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Is this seconded?
I'll second that, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Now, there are any questions, members of the council? I'm looking. You're very quiet tonight. Oh, right. Come along, Councillor.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a question on the Welcome Back Fund. As we had until March to spend the money, why was it an urgent decision?
Because it was urgent that the Welcome Back Fund was put back into the local community as quickly as possible, and delaying 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks to make a decision here at the council wasn't felt appropriate. Our businesses need support now, not 3, 4, 5 months in advance. They need it now, Councillor Thurborn. Therefore, it was an urgent decision to get the money, the government's grant money, out to our local businesses as quickly as possible.
You all right with that? Good. Anybody else? No. Okay. This report is just for noting. And we're now on to item 7, which is the governance report. Please can I ask the Vice Chair, Councillor Colin Sharples, to present the report of the meeting held on the 27th of July.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The Governance Committee met on the 27th of July and we considered and noted a report on the South Ribble Borough Council Audit Plan. We considered and approved a report on the management responses to the External Auditors Planning Inquiries 2020-2021. We considered and noted a report on Treasury Management Annual Report and June Quarter Monitoring 2021-2022. And we also considered and noted the Statement of Accounts for the financial year 2020-2021. Members are presented with the report at pages 25 to 28 of the papers. I thank members of the committee for their attendance and contributions, and officers for the reports and diligence. And with that, I recommend the council note the report. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Sharples, is this seconded? I've got Councillor Ian Watkinson to second this report. All right, wake up, Councillor. It's your turn. Right, thank you. Can we note this report, please? Are there any questions from any? Yes, Councillor Walton.
Just that there's a spelling mistake on item 11 on page 26. Thank you, James.
Item, whatever it is, when I've crossed, item 8, isn't it?
Yes.
Item 8. I haven't got my glasses on, that's why. And this is the Scrutiny Committee, and this item is again for noting. Can I ask the Chair of Scrutiny, Councillor David Howarth, to present the report?
Thank you, Mayor. This is the report of the, I need better glasses, I think, Scrutiny Budget and Performance Panel that was held on the 13th of September 2021. We scrutinised and delved into the Q1 Performance Monitoring Report, and we also questioned the Revenue Capital Budget Monitoring Report, and our findings and recommendations are as set out in the report, and I would like to move it.
Thank you, Councillor. Is this report seconded? Right, thank you. And this is just for noting, but are there any questions from anybody on council? No. Okay, we're now on to item 9. They were speeding through. It's not going to be another of those meetings we're all on before 8 o'clock, is it? Right. Report of standards. Can I ask Carol Woolridge to present her report? Thank you, Councillor Woolridge.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm presenting the report of the Standards Committee hearing held on the 6th of September 2021 with 3 recommendations to Council, along with a summary of the findings and decision made by the Standards Committee in regard to the Standards hearing following the complaint brought by Councillor Mick Titherington against the behaviour of Councillor Barry Yates at the planning meeting held on November the 17th, 2020. Council are not asked to make a decision on the Standards complaint, but to simply receive the report in accordance with the Standards Committee decision. However, the committee made one further recommendation to review the Constitution, and the committee would seek the Council's support on this. The complaint alleged that Councillor Barry Yates had, at the aforesaid meeting, threatened and bullied other members, disregarded and disputed officer advice, generally brought the Council into disrepute. The committee upheld the complaint on the grounds that Councillor Yates had breached the SRB Code of Conduct in the following areas. Part A, paragraph 10, perception of members' behaviour by the public. Part C, paragraph 1, general obligations, failing to treat Councillor Flannery with respect. Part C, paragraph 2B, general obligations, bullying other persons, namely Councillor Flannery, Councillor Adams and Councillor Hancock. It was also noted that the behaviour succeeded in discouraging Councillor Hancock from participating in the vote. Part A, paragraph 9, bringing the Council into disrepute. The committee made no findings in breach of the Code of Conduct in relation to the head of legal, although they found his continuing challenge of the advice inappropriate behaviour. They acknowledged the apology already provided by Councillor Yates. Because of the breaches of the Code of Conduct by Councillor Yates, it was agreed by the committee that the following sanctions should be applied. That the outcome of the hearing be reported to full council in public session. Training on the Code of Conduct for Councillor Yates arranged by the Monitor Officer and arrangements to be made within 2 weeks of the hearing. The committee also wished to make it clear that they'd taken the removal from the Planning Committee prior to this hearing as a mitigating circumstance, and that had not this happened, they would have made the same recommendation, as they viewed the breach of code relating to bullying so serious. The committee also agreed a further recommendation that the monitoring officer be directed to lead on a review of the local Code of Conduct, guidance notes and procedure documents. In presenting this report, I'd like to thank the independent persons for their continued work and invaluable advice provided to the committee throughout this investigation and the hearing. I'd also like to thank the rest of the Standards Committee for their contributions during deliberations, and on their behalf thank the officers for their support and advice during the hearing proceedings. I'll move the report. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Is this report seconded?
The proposal for Council to note the report, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Mort. Are there any questions from any members of the Council? No. Sorry. Oh, sorry, Councillor Tidrington.
Thank you, Mayor. I think I should say that, I mean, I've been on this council since 2005, and during that time I've partaken in a number of heated debates, discussions, and taken part in the democratic process. And I think during that time, although we've been on different sides of the political divide and we've had our arguments, we have been able to maintain, in the main anyway, a respect for each other's views and to conduct ourselves in a proper and fitting manner, and a manner in which I believe members of the public should expect of us. And I want to refer to a letter that the monitoring officer wrote to group leaders on the 25th of September 2020. And an excerpt from that, it says, "I would ask you to encourage your members not to make allegations in public meetings going forward. I am not clear what purpose this serves, and there are other ways to make points, political or otherwise, about the reasonableness of other groups' position." So, I mean, there's a number of things that I tried to highlight, and in the end I highlighted them all. And I think in essence what it is saying is that we've got to behave ourselves and conduct ourselves in a proper manner. I mean, I know that we have a bit of banter sometimes. I know that there are exchanges. But when you accuse other members of criminal activities, when you threaten them to call the police, when you accuse them of criminal acts, then without any substance, by the way, without any substance, then I think it's gone too far. And all you have to do, and I say this to the whole of council, all you have to do is to have a look at that recording of that meeting. Because I wasn't part of the committee, I was looking in on it, and frankly, I was appalled. I was absolutely appalled and ashamed for the council, because that is not the way that we should behave ourselves. We need to respect each other's points of view. We need to take the advice of our officers, and we need to make sure that when we are carrying out our duties as a councillor, then we do show that respect and acknowledge the views of others. And that's why I raised the complaint, because I don't refer matters to standards lightly. In fact, I do it reluctantly. I mean, I've never done it before, but I felt it was necessary to do it on this occasion. Because, I mean, those of us who were on the council before this knew that we had to amend the code of conduct for members, and as far as I am aware, we all signed up. We all signed up for that. And I think that what we have to do is to make sure, as a responsible to the people that elect us, that we do conduct ourselves in a proper and respectful manner. Now, what we can't do is that we can't continue for the monitoring officer to write to councillors asking them to conduct themselves in a manner if we all sign up to a code of conduct, if after that we're just going to stick two fingers up at it. It doesn't serve a purpose at all. And what I hope that all of us do have the same mission in mind in making sure that this council, South Ribble Council, is respected for the way that it conducts itself. Now, we have had the debate before, and I know Councillor Margaret Smith has said that she's got concerns about the toothlessness of the Standards Committee. So I hope that from this, what we can do, all party, cross party, have a look at it to see whether or not we can strengthen the powers of the Standards Committee, so that we can achieve what I believe all the council does want to see, and that is showing respect for each other. Although you can have your political debates and divisions, but you can also acknowledge and respect the other person's point of view. Thank you, Mayor.
Does anybody else want to say anything? Councillor Walton.
Thank you, Mayor. Our position had always been clear that we would respect the decision, the Standards Committee, and so we respect the sanctions of the Standards Committee for Councillor Yates to receive training from the Code of Conduct, because we all want to be able to show respect and consideration for each other. We also support the recommendations to establish a cross-party and stakeholders working group to undertake and review the local government Code of Conduct, so that we can all, again, revisit it and make sure that we're all familiar with it and we can all get on with the business that we're here for. Thank you.
Oh, excuse me. Anybody else wants to say anything? Oh, Councillor Tomlinson.
Thank you. First of all, can I welcome the comments of the leader of the opposition? I think if they're followed through, they're very welcome. Now it's really time for the opposition leader and her group to walk the walk as well as talk the talk, because we've heard this kind of comment before. We've heard the previous leader, Councillor Smith, as Councillor Tithington said, bemoan really the lack of powers that the Standards Committee and the standard regime has had. I've been on this council a long, long time.
I wasn't appalled. I was dumbfounded, really, when I watched that clip. I'd never seen anything like it. And Barry's smirking at me for some reason. Obviously, still think it's funny. It did, yes, it did. I was dumbfounded that in a public quasi-judicial committee that comes with all the restrictions and all the training that goes with that, and all the risk to this council that comes with a quasi-judicial committee, that a member would wave his mobile phone around, claim he was going to report another member to the police, in the face of the clear and unequivocal advice of our legal team that his complaint had no ground. What does that say about us as a council? What does it say about the relationships we have with each other? What does it say about the trust we have both in each other and our senior members of staff? The reputational risk to this council, not to the Labour group or the Conservative group or the Lib Dems or even Councillor Yates or Flannery, the risk to this council that we all represent. And I don't know about anybody, I'm particularly proud to be a member of South Ribble Borough Council. I think under all leaders and administrations, we've done some great stuff, and I'm proud to be a member of this council. I wasn't proud when I watched that video. I was not proud to be a member of this council. Now, as I said, I welcome the words of Councillor Mrs Walton, and I hope she can follow through with that. But I give you fair warning now, that if those promises are not followed through, I will be lobbying in the Labour group for this council to take any action that it seems fit to make sure this sort of thing never happens again, so that we can get on. I get on with most of you, and whether it's in committee or in out of committee, we do. And it's quite right that you know, when I was in opposition, I tested your decisions, and now that we're running the council, you test our decisions. That's how our democracy works. But it has to be done within certain parameters. It has to be done within a code of conduct and certain measures of behaviour. And I'm sorry, that night a line was crossed. A line was crossed, and it wasn't acceptable. And I joined Councillor Mrs Smith in bemoaning the lack of teeth that the standards regime has, because if we had more teeth, I have a funny feeling we might have been discussing greater sanctions than we have here. And I'll just finish off by saying what I said earlier. I reserve the right to push this council to go even further in future if things don't improve.
Mr Tomlinson, is there anybody else who'd like anything to say? Yes, sorry, I miss you because you're at the side. I don't look sideways.
I didn't actually watch that planning committee live. I was contacted the morning after and advised to watch it because of what had actually taken place. And like other members, I just found the whole thing appalling, and I felt that the council had been seriously brought into disrepute. It's not pleasant to watch somebody waving the phone around, threatening to phone the police and threatening other members of the committee. And in a manner where that particular member of the committee that was doing it felt that he knew better than the officers, he knew better than advice that was being given, and refused to accept it. Because for some reason he thinks he is the planning authority, and he is the authority who somehow knows better than our employed officers. And I find that very hard to stomach. And I also welcome what Councillor Walton has just said, that she is in support and her group is in support of the recommendations here. But what I've yet to hear from anybody in the Conservative group is, do they consider that what Councillor Yates did on that night was inappropriate and improper and brought this council into disrepute? Or are they now all gathering round and protecting one of their own members because they feel that that is the way to operate, and that is the way that a group operates, and that is the way to behave. Does Councillor Yates accept that what he did on that night was improper and untoward? Because if Councillor Yates can't accept that, and if Councillor Yates can't stand up and apologise, as I feel he should do, and if the Conservative group don't believe that, then we can stand up and have debates about standards in public office and standards in this council till the cows come home, and we will get no further forward. There has to be an acceptance of what is and what is not appropriate behaviour. And until we hear that from every member of the council, in every group, we are not moving forward.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Foster.
And well said, Councillor Howarth. The external auditors and the LGA peer review have both reported to Council in recent months that the improvements are substantial within this authority. It's back in 2017-18, and the improvements are palpable, except for one thing, and they say certain member conduct. I look, Mayor, and I look at some conduct of members over the past. I've been on the council for 14 years. Members of, and I'm going to state this because it needs to be put into perspective. We've had homophobic attacks on members of this council in the same group. Nothing was done about it. We've had a male member of a certain political group sat the backside of an officer. Nothing was done about it. We've had a female member of the Conservative group resigning from this council because of bullying and harassment within the group there. Nothing was done about it. We've then got a serious allegation of bullying and harassment of other members that you appear to be doing nothing about. Let me put this into perspective. Bullying and harassment of other members of this council. Councillor Harry Hancock, one of the most respected members in this council, felt he couldn't vote, he couldn't do his democratic duty and vote in a planning meeting because of the conduct of Councillor Yates and the threats that he was experiencing from Councillor Yates. It's not my view, that's the view of the Standards Committee who will help the complaint. If an officer of this council was found guilty of bullying and harassment, that's gross misconduct, colleagues. That's gross misconduct. That officer would most probably be subject to the most strictest of sanctions and quite possibly would lose their job, they'd be sacked. Unfortunately, because the sanctions regime in England has no teeth, council, we can't dismiss a council for gross misconduct, but we can look at his group and do something about it, or by not doing something about it they're condoning that behaviour. Condoning bullying and harassment. I look at members of the Conservative group, many who I class as friends who I've known for many, many years. You don't condone bullying and harassment. What on earth are you doing? What on earth are you doing? And if you don't feel comfortable tonight, then do something about it. And if you do feel comfortable tonight, perhaps you could watch the video again tomorrow. Just watch the video. It's embarrassing. What makes this matter worse, colleagues, is I've been officially informed today that Councillor Yates and his legal representative are now taking this council. You might find it funny, Barry. I certainly don't. I don't find it funny. You've laughed all the way through. Councillor Yates is taking this council. It's the ombudsman, I always struggle with that word, claiming maladministration of this authority and citing our legal officer, our monitoring officer, and the chief executive, and accusing them of political bias. Let that sink in, what this gentleman is doing to this authority. He's already been found guilty of bringing it into disrepute. He's already been found guilty of bullying other members, and he's now accusing our senior officers, our most senior officers, of political bias. And I do not care, Mayor, I do not care, colleagues, what the issue they're debating and whether we desperately disagree with one another. We do not bully and harass one another at any time. And I just so wish, Councillor Mrs Smith, you promised to do something about this after the Standards Committee. You stood in council and you promised at the end of the Standards Committee you would do something. You're no longer leader of the opposition, I understand that, but the Conservative group is doing absolutely nothing about the bullying and harassment of members of this council, about bringing this council into disrepute, and about Councillor Yates accusing our senior officers of political bias because they're trying to do their job. This is a dark, dark day for this council, and we cannot allow this to happen. Thank you.
Councillor Foster. Councillor Yates, you have the right to reply. You don't want to say anything at all?
No, Mayor.
Okay, fine. Does anybody else want to say anything? Oh, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't going to speak this evening on this item. Like many people in this chamber, myself included, have sailed very close to the wind on member conduct over the years. But like many people in here, myself included, have drawn the line and moved forward to do what we was elected to do, which is to represent our communities and stand up for the people who elected us. I wasn't watching that meeting live, but I have watched it back, and I'm disgusted at the behaviour, but not surprised at the behaviour of Councillor Yates, having been subjected to bullying from him over many years within this council. What saddens me and what disappoints me is that Councillor Yates, at our previous to last meeting, was put back on the planning committee pending the outcome. The words were pending the outcome of the Standards Committee meeting. Councillor Yates still sits on that on that planning committee forum, and I'm waiting for the leader of the Conservative group to announce the removal of Councillor Yates from that committee, with her words she used herself, pending the outcome of the Standards Committee, which has now resolved their meetings. Thank you.
Excellent. Anybody else wants to say anything, pass a comment, ask a question? No? No. And are you sure, Councillor Yates, are you sure you don't want to come back and say anything? Right, okay. You can't say I'm not being fair then, can you?
You're always fair.
Thank you, Councillor Yates. Right, I'll promise not to bully you. Right, now we need to well, it's to be noted, this and there are other elements that aren't. We now have to, we're looking at the decision, aren't we?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, the substance of the report is for noting, which is the findings of the Standards Committee. I think it's fair to say there's cross-chamber support for a review of the Code of Conduct and the associated procedure documents. So on that basis, Chair, we can proceed with establishing the working group.
Fine. Thank you very much, everybody, for that. We will now move on to item 10, extension to cafe pavement licences. Oh, that's right, isn't it? We're moving on, aren't we? Yeah. This sounds a little bit more entertaining. And can I ask, it's your night tonight, Councillor Flannery. It's your report again.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, busy night. I'm sorry I'm not rising. It's just that I had a hip replacement operation last year and it's playing up a little bit. So that's for Caleb rather than you. Right. Thank you. Okay, thanks everyone. Okay, the Business and Planning Act 2020 obtained royal assent on the 22nd of July 2020. The Act introduced a number of powers and requirements on local authorities that affect how they deal with a variety of issues, with the aim of supporting local businesses and helping economic recovery as the COVID-19 restrictions put in place by the government continue to be eased. The Act introduced a temporary fast-track process for these businesses to obtain permission from the local authority for the placement of furniture such as tables and chairs on the pavements outside their premises, which will enable them to maximise their capacity whilst adhering to social distancing guidelines. It is a statutory requirement to extend the current cafe pavement licence scheme until the 30th of September 2022, in line with the Business and Planning Act 2020, Pavement Licences, Coronavirus Amendment Regulations 2021. So therefore, members are asked to 1. Adopt the Business and Planning Act 2020, Pavement Licence, Coronavirus Amendment Regulations 2021, to agree to extend the proposed duration of granting the pavement licence until the 30th of September 2022, to extend the delegated authority to officers until September 2022, to agree the fee for new pavement licence to remain at £100, and finally to agree for all current pavement licence holders not to be charged to reapply until September 2022 due to the duration they were forced to close because of the COVID restrictions whilst licensed previously in 2021. Thank you, Mayor.
Is there anybody seconding this?
Indeed, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Are there any questions from members of the council? I'm looking and I'm not seeing. No. No. We've not had any written representations from the public. The public don't want to ask any questions. You, Mrs. Metcalfe, do you want to ask a question? Yeah. Councillor Phil Smith.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just again, with regard to sort of procedure, I suppose, with regard to things like these policies would normally go to a licensing committee before they came to the council. In my experience, those are debated long and hard at the licensing committee. With the full details and the full backup of the legal representatives at those meetings. And the licensing committee that would then make a recommendation to council. That is that's a procedure we've always had in the past. I see this is sort of, I won't say bypassing that system a bit, but I mean, sometimes the licensing committee has actually been cancelled because of lack of business, and for me, this sort of business should go to the licensing committee first, and then with a recommendation to the council itself. And I just note with some of the on page. Well, it's at the bottom of page 133 and 134 with regard to the procedures about allocating licences, which is fine, goes to the licensing officers. But again, there's a one in there about the revocation of pavement licences. Now, this is a delegated decision to officers and to the chairman of licensing, and I'm sure they do a good job of that. But normally, a revocation of a licence would normally go to the licensing committee, and where members of the public can turn up and help make that decision. So, just comments I'm making there, and members, I don't know whether members want to take that on board and maybe change that, but if not, we'll go for it anyway because it does help. Thank you.
Councillor Foster.
Thanks, Mayor. Just briefly, because I've heard a few times over the last few weeks as well that the members of the Conservative group not comfortable with papers not going to the Governance Committee, not going to the Scrutiny Committee or the Licensing Committee, but the administration post-pandemic is desperately trying to get things moving. We don't want to slow items down by waiting for a month for the licensing committee to make recommendations to send to council, which may have another meeting in 6 or 8 weeks' time. And what I would say to all members is, regardless of any committee within this authority, this council, all of us here, have an opportunity to have a say now tonight. And we can all have a detailed debate about this policy if we wish, just as you would do in the licensing committee. And we have actually more legal officers with us present tonight than the licensing committee may have. And it's same for the governance committee. Ultimately, it's this council that makes the final decisions, not the individual committees. And so what we're trying to do is not slow stuff down. Our community and our businesses are desperate for us to get moving again. Therefore, where it's appropriate, and we do speak to the chairs of the individual committees, where it's appropriate, we will continue to bring decisions to council so that there can be a swift resolution, a swift decision if that's appropriate, and we can adopt policies and get things moving out in the high street in all the homes of the people that they're here to represent. So that's the reason. Thank you.
So, do you want to come back on that, Councillor Smith?
On the basis that we're debating policy then, and on the basis we're debating the report itself. And it's just with regard to sort of the chairs and the tables outside various premises. There are various premises in South Ribble, and quite a lot of them on Huff Lane. There's quite a lot in Bamber Bridge, where the pavements actually belong to the owners of the properties and the owners of the houses, or the ones that rent it, because there were houses with gardens in the first place. They've already got, I'm assuming through the planning regime, permission to put tables and chairs and various things out there. Now, presumably then, some of them are even sectioned off. They've got ropes around them and tables, which is good. There's nothing wrong with that. But presumably then they could apply for this licence to further extend them onto various footpaths in that case. I'm just wondering whether we could sort of confirm that is the case and that is the way forward. Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, Councillor Flanagan.
Just in response to Councillor Smith's queries, first of all, it's a statutory requirement that we adopt this. That's the first one. To Councillor Foster's point, it's imperative that timings of our meetings don't get in the way of real business, which Phil will know about because he's been helping with the Business Recovery Group. And secondly, if businesses want to apply to extend, and they can, and it gets treated accordingly, and it'll come to licensing. So literally, I think it's just a timing issue. But I think the consensus here is very supportive, and the businesses who've been in touch with us are saying this is really welcome. So another good bit of business from the council. Thank you.
Oh, Councillor Smith. Councillor Lady Smith, not Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, Mayor. It's force of habit. I thank Councillor Foster for his explanation as to why these haven't gone to the licensing committee. I also sit on the Constitutional Task Group Committee, and that hasn't met for a while. I'm not in any hurry to meet that because I'm a bit of a geek on that, and you have to be to sit on it. And so anything that doesn't actually go there is fine with me. But as regards the licensing committee, I think where I have a little bit of a problem with it is that there is a cabinet of 5, which is fine, and I know they're very keen to get things moving. But it does seem to me that we also need the involvement in other committees of members, because you need to feel that you are part of the council and that you are actually doing your job as a member of a committee, as a member of a licensing committee, for instance, to debate important matters like this. And I just worry that people might feel a little bit like they are being sidelined slightly and not being invited to a committee to debate things like this. It's only an observation, it's just a thought, if you bear it in mind. Thank you.
And I know I'm not supposed to join in debates, but I'm going to do, because I agree completely with that if you are not completely involved as a councillor, and I think the pandemic has been one of those times when we've all sat at home and twiddled our thumbs and things have happened and we haven't felt involved. But I do agree that taking part in our committees, whether it's planning or licensing or whatever, we feel that we are contributing to being a councillor. So yeah, I'm going to agree with you there. Yes, yeah. And I don't know whether I'm allowed, but I don't care. I don't care. Now, we have to vote on this. Anybody else want to say anything, or are we finished with the debate? Right. We need to vote on this. So can we go to the vote, please, Chris?
Thank you, Mayor. There are 3 resolutions to take a vote on, which are contained at paragraphs 3, 4 and 5. Councillor Flannery did read them out. I don't propose to read them out again. Is anyone opposed to the extension of the policy as proposed, and the levels of fees and the extension of the delegated authority to officers proposed? In the absence of any opposition to that, I think we can accept it as approved.
Right. That's approved. Thank you. And thank you for everybody's hard work on that. Being on licence, and I do know how much work goes on. So well done, everybody, and thank you to the officers. We're now on. We've done that. We're now on item 12. We've done 11. We're on number 12. Right, this is the Corporate Capital Programme and Balance Sheet Monitoring Report. That's a mouthful, isn't it? And this is Councillor Matthew Tomlinson to present the report. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Mayor. And it is also asking Council to approve a change to the capital budget, and that's why it's here. This report would normally go to Councillor Howarth's Performance and Budget Scrutiny Panel, and indeed it has already done so, and it's gone through Cabinet. But because we're asking for a change to the capital programme of over £100,000, we do need full Council's approval. Those who were either at the panel or at Cabinet had the chance to see the change that has happened. But for those who weren't there, it's 2 new vehicles we need to buy that we weren't planning to replace. There's been one had a fire, I think. One set on fire, and another one's involved in an accident. There have been insurance claims, but if you've got a car and you know when you get paid out for insurance, it never covers the cost of a replacement. So we are having to spend more money than we thought on 2 new vehicles. We do need full Council's approval to do so, and I trust we will get that approval. And with that, I'll leave it at that, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tomlinson. Is this seconded? I've got Councillor Paul Foster seconded. It's your turn. Are there any questions from the Council? Any? No? Good. Good. Now that's it. Councillor Ogilvie.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I've seen most of this already at Cabinet. However, as the board member for includes Rodden Park, my eyes are drawn once again to the on page 47 of the report, the £745,000 increase in the budget. That represents nearly 40% rise relative to the original budget proposal. And I noticed from the performance monitoring report that the project is described as being green. I just wonder at what level of percentage overspend does a project go from green to amber or indeed to red? Thank you.
Councillor Tomlinson.
We've had the debate on the increased costs.
To get involved in that at all. It's green because that's on the work that we're doing against a timetable that we set. I've been actually on Worden Park today, and the contractors were kind enough to let me in and visit the site, and I'm pleased to say that work is carrying on apace. As far as I'm concerned, the project is on target to be delivered for next year and is indeed green.
Councillor Tomlinson. Yes, Councillor Ogilvie. To come back on that.
Yes, I'm disappointed in that response, I have to say, having previously specifically asked the Cabinet member many months ago if there was a conflict between budget and timescale, that his priority would be budget and not timescale. You've just given the opposite response there, so that's why I'm disappointed.
Under the terms of the Constitution, how many times you're going to let people ask me a question, but I will reply to that, because this wasn't about budget versus timescales. When I was asked that original question, if somebody could deliver this in 18 months, but it's cheaper, or it could deliver it in 12 months and it was dearer, which one would I choose? I said 18 months. I would wait for a cheaper option. Waiting for a cheaper option was not on the table. The longer we wait, the dearer this gets. We all know, we've all had the debate, and we'll have it later, about inflation in the construction industry, and the longer we wait for this, the more expensive it will be. So, first of all, I don't accept the premise of your comments. Times change, and when times change, wise men change their minds.
Was there somebody else? I thought somebody else. Was it Councillor? I thought somebody. Let's see.
Can I just draw the attention for Worden Hall again for the transfer of £45,000 from the corporate buildings budget to Worden Hall on page 42. I'd like to know how many times I've been transferring money from a business as usual column into a capital column. How many times has that happened for Worden Hall, and how much does that cost?
Is that right?
From where I stand, you've got a business as usual column, so you've got a budget for the buildings that you've used. You've taken money out of that column and put it to Word and Hole, and you've actually stated it in there. That's what it looks like to me. So can you explain that, why you've moved that £45,000 from one column to another?
Again, we've had this debate before, and council agreed to the changes. Variance in budgets are quite normal, and there are levels that are set beyond which we cannot go. But if we constantly move money from one budget to another as circumstances change, it's a fairly standard thing. It was debated, it was there for members to comment on last time we discussed it, and we've done it, we've agreed it, it's been agreed, and I don't see any benefit in discussing it further.
I'm going to bring the end to this debate because I don't think it's going to get any further. So I'm going to bring the end to the debate, and we're now going to take it to vote.
Thank you, Mayor. There's one recommendation. It's to approve the variation to the capital programme, which is included in Appendix B, specifically a £130,000 increase to the vehicle replacement programme. Are there any opposition to that proposal? No. In the absence of any opposition, Mayor, it can be treated as approved.
That's agreed. Thank you. And we're now on to item 13, land transfer at Vernon Carews. And this item is for decision. Is there something happening I don't know about? You've got excited up that end. Why are all Liberals excited? Oh, I said it wrong, did I? Oh, I'm ever so sorry. What did I say? Carews. Carews. Yeah. I'm going to call it Vernon Carews. Yeah, you're allowed mistake. Anyway, Vernon Carews, right? And it's for decision as to how you pronounce it. Can I ask the Member of Finance, Councillor Tomlinson, to present his report?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I have a feeling we'll be calling it Vernon Carews for a while now. But members who were at Cabinet will have seen and have been following this for quite some time. We've been in discussion with the developers of the land off the Causey about taking this sports complex and reservoir into our ownership. An enormously exciting project with loads of potential. I know Councillor Titherington, as health and wellbeing, has been working incredibly hard over the past few months to make this happen. We've been in discussions with the developers about the risk involved in taking the reservoir on, which is what the recommendation is about. I'm looking forward to developing, in conjunction with Councillor Titherington, an action plan for this site so we can develop it even further. But we have been given £500,000 to help us look after the reservoir, and so we will now have to put that into the revenue budget, and that's what we're asking Council to agree. Basically, we're asking Council, do they agree to accept £500,000? I don't know how much debate we're going to get on that, but to me it seems like a good deal. But I think, you know, over the coming months and years, we should see some really exciting stuff going down there, and it's protecting it as well. It's protecting another bowling green we've protected, which is a great thing, but we've got cricket, football, boxing, and potential for much, much more. But that's not what this is about. This is just about the money. Thank you.
Is this seconded? Thank you. Now, this is for decision, so does anybody want to ask any questions, anything clarification? Councillor Mrs Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. It is a very exciting project. It was in our corporate plan in 2019, and it's very pleasing to see that it's actually now made some progress. It has been a long journey, and we knew that when we first looked at the reservoir, it needed some attention, and that has thankfully been done and carried out to the satisfaction of the people that inspect them. We did have some discussion with our Chief Executive. He came to talk to us about it and did explain it all to us. and mentioned that there could be some time before this actually comes to fruition, maybe 18 months. But he did assure us that the 106 money, once the agreement is signed, will actually be up front. I'm just wondering, will that be the same for the £500,000? Once the agreement is signed, will that come immediately to the council? And will you be considering putting it into a reserve account simply for the maintenance of the reservoir, and possibly if the £500,000 could be invested so that it could generate some income? I know there's very little income generation about at the moment, but if it could be generated, it could then be put into the investment at the reserve account, and therefore we could perhaps have a little bit more certainty and longevity about the whole thing, because it is a very, very important thing that we make sure that we have that money there to actually look after and maintain that very important asset. Thank you.
Councillor Smith. Anybody? Mr. Titherington. Sunday name. Right. Councillor Titherington.
Thank you for that, because I mean, I have earned the title of councillor. I mean, I put myself up for election, so I appreciate that. Well, I'm not going to answer the question that is being posed, but I mean, what I do know is that in the discussions that we have had, I mean, that money is there for the maintenance of the reservoir. But I mean, I think it's been debated at Cabinet and there was cross-party support about it. I mean, I'm just rising to say that, I mean, how excited that I am under the health and wellbeing portfolio, because the potential there, I think it's been described in the press, is enormous. If the development there goes ahead in terms of the housing, it's going to be the possibility of a sporting village there with a whole range of sort of activities which people can participate on, which is part of our leisure and sports strategy. Then I think we'll all be delighted. So, I mean, I think the number of superlatives that we've attached to this development has been exhausted, but simply to say it's a really, really exciting prospect, and whenever it started, I look forward to when it's finished and the people of Penwitham, the borough and beyond can enjoy the activities of their choice.
Anybody else? Oh, Councillor Ogilvie.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, this is a very welcome report and a very potentially exciting prospect. I've just got one point of detail, which is an extension to the question that I asked at Cabinet, and that's in relation to the 500,000 gets split up into £20,000 per year for maintenance. The annual inspection that's required every year, the answer I got when questioning that at Cabinet was that that would be done by an outside agency, and the cost of that would come out of the £20,000 annual maintenance fee. I just wondered if you had an idea of what the annual inspection cost would be, or if we can find out fairly quickly whether that potentially doesn't leave us an awful lot of money for general maintenance out of the £20,000. Thank you.
Councillor Tomlinson, I presume that's a question for you.
Yeah, and I think Councillor Mrs Smith asked a question as well. My understanding is the cash will come to us. What we're actually asking tonight is for council to agree a revenue budget to be set up, so it will become part of our annual budget. It'll be there perfectly identified for everybody to see. In terms of what we do with the 500,000 when we get it up front, I'm going to leave that to our treasury management people, because they are far brighter than I am when it comes to handling the money. When it comes to Councillor Ogilvie's question, do I know how much an inspection will cost? I don't. What I do know is it was factored in to the cost. If someone does know, I'm looking towards Jonathan, maybe he might be able to help, and we'll get you an answer if that's sorry, Jonathan. I'll get you an answer if that's appropriate. But I know that we entered into long deliberations with the people who own all this land now before we took on the reservoir. We're perfectly aware of the risk, and we've been talking about it for a while. I remember Councillor Clark bringing his expertise from his working life to ask some very pertinent questions, and those were accepted with good grace by the staff because he clearly knew what he was talking about. So I'm reassured and I'm confident that we've looked at the potential cost, but there is a specific reply about how much an inspection cost. I'll do my best to get it to you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any happy with that? Oh, Councillor Martin, I can't see your light.
Thank you, Chair. Also, Mayor. It rhymes, so we're all right there. This is a great opportunity for Penworth and South Ribble in a wider sense. Very pleased to see the other part of Penworth and having some money spent on it. Wink, you know what I mean? Because it has been lacking over a few years. So it'd be good to see some investment and something going forward in there. It'll be excellent for the youth of that area and some of us older people who might think we're still young, but we don't bounce so well. But I congratulate everyone who's worked really hard on this. It's been gasping for air for too long, and I'm glad we've thrown a bottle of oxygen. Thank you.
Excellent. Anybody else want to say anything? Ask a question. No? Yes, Councillor Smith.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'm just rising to speak briefly on this, and in the sense that we obviously are fully supportive of it, and we'll be supporting this all the way. One thing that's in the report, but not sort of major in the report, obviously, is the links with Central Parks, which will have a real benefit of fresh air, breathing air into the local community in that area. The biggest park in the northwest of England, which have been a long while in the making. It was always a 15 to 20 year project, and I'm glad to see it coming forward now. Thank you.
Isn't it nice when we start agreeing on things? You know, I quite like it. I don't know whether I'm in the right place when we'll start agreeing on things. But it's nice. Right, is that it? Does anybody else want to say anything? I'm looking. No. Right, can we take this to the vote, please?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mayor. There's a recommendation that Council puts in place a revenue budget funded from the £500,000 receipt to cover ongoing reservoir running costs, which should last 25 years based on a cost of £20,000 per annum. Anyone opposed to that recommendation? In the absence of any opposition, Mayor, that can be treated as approved.
Right. Thank you, everybody. I think that's going to be a cracking thing, even if I can't pronounce it. Vernon's. I'll miss the bit off I can't pronounce. We're on item 14, and this is changes to the Council's constitution. Substitute committee members. Please can I ask the Leader of the Council, Paul Foster, to present this report.
Thanks, Mayor. And the one of the challenges we have as a council during the pandemic, and for as far as I'm concerned, by the way, we are still very much in a pandemic. It's very much business as usual. According to the government, we've strongly lobbied to allow members to use the hybrid systems and not present themselves to the authority. We can clearly see the reasons why some members, the more vulnerable members, would not want to come into the authority. There's also the challenges, Mayor, haven't we, where, as has happened, we've got members that have been struck down with COVID. One of the challenges that we face, and one of my real concerns, and I hope all members will accept, that during the pandemic I've always tried to keep democracy going. Always tried to keep democracy going. And what my concern is now is there's a very, very good chance during the autumn that all members from all parties are going to start being impacted by the COVID pandemic. Historically, we haven't had substitute members on committees, but if we're ever going to do it now, we must do it now. What we're trying to do is allow the democratic process to continue, and therefore, particularly with the pandemic as we face it, we need reserves ready in case members can't attend, particularly the statutory committees of this council. Now, I know I'm now going to be criticised by certain members across the way there because this should have gone to the Governance Committee in their view. My view is, again, we could have sent it to the Governance Committee and maybe brought this back in November, December's council meetings. Why, again, would we delay when something is so urgent? And the guardian of the Constitution, colleagues, is us. So therefore, we can debate, as long as we wish to debate this tonight, the why, rights and wrongs. We have the council's legal officers here. Therefore, after discussing it with the chair of the governance committee and the monitoring officer, we felt it appropriate, because of the real challenge we have with time here, that we brought it straight to council. And hopefully most members would accept that that's actually the right thing to do. We also, please all remember, we already have substitute members on the Shared Services Committee, and that works really well. Our colleagues at Chorley have substitute members and have done for a number of years, and that works really well. If I may, Mayor, there's, and I do apologise to Council, the Labour nominations were submitted late. That is 100% entirely my fault, so I apologise to Council for that. And on the sheet that members have in front of them, there's a couple of minor amendments I wish to propose, if I may. Mayor, on the Governance Committee, Councillor Kath Unsworth, it's actually should have said being Councillor Matthew Trafford, who's going on to the Governance Committee as a substitute with Councillor Derek Forrest. And on the Shared Services Joint Committee and the Appointment and Appointment Panel, it's Councillor Belinsky-Gelder on the two follow items on there. And with that, I'm pleased to propose these substitute members to Council. Thank you.
Is this seconded? Thank you. Are there any questions from anybody on the council? Yes, Councillor Walton.
Thank you, Mayor. The Conservative Group support the principles of the substitute members for the committees. Not all local authorities have substitute members, and if they do, some have very strict guidelines written into the Constitution for members to follow when a substitute is required, to ensure that there will be no abuse of the substitute rules. All members must regard that being a substitute member of a committee comes with the same responsibilities as the nominated member they will be substituting. It is very important that, as an elected member of this council, they attend all the meetings of which they are a nominated member, unless there is a genuine reason not to do so. We would recommend that the changes to the Constitution provide clear procedures and responsibilities that all members must follow if they are required to attend as a substitute or, in fact, request a substitute. In addition to the changes already listed in the report, we would suggest that the member must, if possible, give up to 24 hours notice and inform the substitute member, the committee chair and the democratic services of the reasons they are unable to attend the meeting. Substitute members must be considered the same as a nominated member and receive all the paperwork for their nominated committees on the same day as nominated members to ensure they have enough time to read the relevant papers, so they will be prepared to attend a meeting if they are required to do so. The nominated member who requires a substitute to attend the meeting in their absence will not receive an attendance mark. As mentioned before, we did have concerns about this not going to the governance Constitution Task Group, which these issues could have been discussed by all cross-party members. Following on from the list of substitute members, it is my understanding that a substitute member of the Scrutiny Budget and Performance Panel must be a member of the Scrutiny Committee, not a substitute member, which it appears that from the Labour group we've got two substitute members for the Scrutiny Committee who are also substitute members for the Scrutiny Budget and Performance Panel. Well, if you're a substitute, you're not on the actual. You'll have to be a member of the Scrutiny Committee to be a substitute member of the Scrutiny Budget Panel. That was my understanding anyway. Okay, so I have in front of me my nominations for the substitute members. From planning, we've got councillors Damien Bretherton and Rita Mullinall. Licensing and Public Safety, Councillor Margaret Smith and Gareth Watson. For the Standards Committee, Councillors Julie Buttery and Alan Ogilvie. For Scrutiny, we've got Councillors Jackie Mort and Carol Chisholm. For the Scrutiny Budget Performance Panel, Councillors Michael Green and Stephen Thirlborn. For the Governance Committee, Councillor Caroline Moon and myself. For the Appeals Committee, Councillor Matt Campbell and Councillor Colin Coulton. For the Shared Services Joint Committee, Councillor Damien Bretherton is already a substitute member, and so we've got Councillor Phil Smith. And the Appointment and Employment Panel, Councillor Moon is already a substitute member. We will have now Councillor Mary Green, and I will provide the list. Yeah, no, I will provide the written list to you. Scrutiny.
Councillor Howard.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Our group are absolutely passionate about supporting this motion, and not for the reasons that have been given so far. This motion, or this proposal, enables what Councillor Turner alluded to at the last meeting, which was diversity and inclusivity, because outside of COVID, whether somebody is ill or isn't ill, we should be encouraging the widest section of the community to be involved in the council, to not feel they can't stand for the council because of any particular reason. Now, there was a report out very recently that stated that 3/4 of councils in this country don't have any facility for paternity or maternity leave amongst elected members. And you may well say, well, it's not a job, so why would they? But I can certainly remember back in 2003, we had a member, 21-year-old young woman, who was elected to the council, probably the youngest until Councillor Trafford, and it was absolutely excellent that a woman of that age, female, was able to stand and get elected to this council. 4 years later, she started a family, and in the run-up, 2007, in the run-up to the elections, she was heavily pregnant, struggling to attend meetings, and that should have been a signal that we should have been helping a member of the council in that position, but instead it was a signal to the Conservatives in particular to attack her for her attendance record. That should not happen, and it certainly should not happen again in the future. And we've just said that, we've just heard from Councillor Walton that members should have to give 24 hours notice. We should be encouraging everybody of every walk of life, every profession, to be involved in the council if they can. Councillor Adams, who can't attend tonight, has been called away to work on a COVID ward, and you want him to give notice. We should be encouraging Councillor Adams, Councillor Ashworth, when she was on the council, to be a member and to participate in this council. We should be encouraging diversity, we should be encouraging inclusivity, and this proposal enables that to a certain degree, as opposed to putting obstacles in the way for members of our community from whatever background, from whatever profession, from whatever sex and from whatever age in participating in this council. And I fully endorse this proposal and we will support it.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Howard. I'm all for including people. Look at me with my 2 sticks. I didn't have 2 sticks when I first came onto the council. I have 2 sticks now, and I am very grateful for the amenities that are offered to me. But can I just complain that this thing is far too steep, and I don't need to be sitting on a platform. So I'm putting that out here because I don't feel equal. I'm sitting on a platform. So there you go. I'm just saying. Councillor Foster.
You need to substitute that blue rinse for a red rinse, maybe, but we'll talk about that later. Yeah, I'm struggling on the Councillor Walton on the scrutiny issue, because if you're a member of the Scrutiny Committee or you're a member of the Scrutiny Budget and Performance Panel, you're still a member of those panels, and what we're doing is nominating substitutes for both those panels. And as it seems relatively straightforward to me, and that's what we're proposing to do. In regarding the papers, council all know every member of this council has access to all council papers via ModGov. So, you know, if members are struggling to find a certain committee or get allocated onto a committee, they just need to speak to the officers and they'll quickly update your iPads and you get access to the to the papers. If they are confidential papers, then, as has already been discussed, Karen, and you remember the licensing committee, for example, the substitutes will get access to the confidential papers as well as the substantive members of that committee. As I say, we can all read all papers for all committees. The 24 hours notice thing, as Councillor Howard says, I'm completely against that. I'll give you two examples. You could get stuck on the M6 in horrendous traffic at 5 o'clock on for a 6 o'clock meeting, totally outside your control. A substitute may be able to jump in straight away. The other issue is you don't know COVID's going to necessarily tell you 24 hours before it hits you. Therefore, you can't possibly give that advance notice. You either accept the principles of substitute members or you don't accept the principles of substitute members. And something I cannot support is asking members to give reasons for not attending. I think that is a very private issue if a member can't attend, and we shouldn't be asking questions like that. We all have our professional integrity, and if we can't attend, we pass our own apologies. We don't necessarily, and we shouldn't be being asked to give personal reasons for that. Thanks, Mayor.
Anybody else want to say anything? Karen, Councillor Walton.
Thank you. My concern about the scrutiny one is that as a long-standing member of the Scrutiny Committee, you have to be a member of the Scrutiny Committee to be a member of the Scrutiny Budget Panel. So if you're a substitute member, does that mean you're a member of the Scrutiny Committee or a substitute member? My problem here is that I took my nominees from the actual Scrutiny Committee, not the substitutes that I'd recommended. And as far as I was concerned, that was where the substitute members come from. And I did say that if possible to give 24 hours notice. I didn't say to make it compulsory, but if possible to give 24 hours notice so that the substitute member could really be up to speed with any particular issues, especially on planning or licensing, that they would be particularly up to speed with very important decisions that they would have to carry out on that committee.
Councillor Ogilvie.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, just a question, which I think all members will probably want to know, which is when do we believe that this policy becomes effective? Because all we are discussing tonight is the fact that we're going to make changes. We haven't seen the changes, and training is required for certain committee members. So I'm just wondering, how quickly do we believe that we will get this in place? Thank you.
Have we got a reply to that? Thank you.
Hopefully in about 1 minute, and then if that goes through council, then clearly those members that are substitutes on, I think it's planning and on licensing, legally can't sit as a substitute until they've done the training. However, I'm also aware that the officers are going to contact the members by tomorrow at the latest, because the training's already been arranged. Alan.
Councillor Ogilvie. Good. Anybody else? I'm looking. No. Yeah.
Thanks. Just a couple of queries that have been raised that I think I might be able to help with. On the drawing from the scrutiny panel appointment is a council appointment. It's not a subcommittee as such of the scrutiny group, but it does tend to be drawn from. So the council can still make that appointment.
When we were asked to become part of this, when we were asked to become members of the Scrutiny Budget Panel, it was from the Scrutiny Committee. You had to be a member of the Scrutiny Committee.
I can confirm as regards to sitting on a scrutiny panel or the Scrutiny Committee, there are provisions that prevent certain people sitting on.
Yes, yeah.
But there aren't any provisions that are positive in that way.
Yes.
So it is a council appointment, and it would be reasonable practice for it to be drawn from the Scrutiny Committee.
Yes.
But what I would say is that if we are, and I'm quite happy if members agree to draft some sort of guidance note to substitute members, which might address some of the issues that you've raised,
yes.
Which will give that. Sitting as a substitute member is an obligation,
yes.
So there will be requirements placed on substitute members, and I can make it clear in that what those are. If members are fully briefed on the matters before them on the panel, then I don't think it matters if they're also subs for the full scrutiny committee. If they are reading the papers, they should be up to speed with what's in front of them.
Thank you. So you're going to do some notes to clarify that situation, right? Thank you. As I appreciate, Karen, you're still a bit about it. I do understand what you're saying, but if you can let Chris do something and see if that puts your mind at rest. Thank you. Anybody else? No? Good. Right, this is going to vote now, please, Chris.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. There are 3 resolutions. One is to change the constitution to permit substitute members to be appointed, that I be authorised to make consequential changes to the council's constitution, and that the members put forward by the group leaders has been either confirmed tonight or on the agenda, be appointed as substitute members until the next annual meeting of the council. It's not really a recommendation, but I will do that note for you as well. Is there any opposition to those recommendations? In the absence of opposition, they are passed, Mayor.
Thank you. Item 15, Public Sector Decarbonisation Scheme, Phase 3 Grant Bid. Please can I ask the Cabinet Member Health and Wellbeing Councillor Mick Titherington to present this report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, Mayor, apologies. Yeah, profuse apologies. I mean, yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, I think we all know, I mean, that the council has declared a climate emergency with the intention of being carbon neutral by 2030. If you look at the minutes of the previous council meeting, you will see that we approved the climate emergency plan and the action plan and the decarbonisation plan. And I think at that time we discussed it. We knew that we were preparing those plans so that if there should be a window of opportunity provided by the government for a funding application, we were ready to go. And I want to pay tribute to the officers for the way that they have prepared to enable to submit those bids. And indeed, I mean, they've been successful in gaining bids. So, I mean, I think that council will agree that we have got to seize any opportunity for funding that will help us achieve the aim that we've set ourselves about becoming carbon neutral. And it's particularly topical because it's in the news, and I think I've said it before, and I think we all now realise that we're drinking in the last chance saloon. So it is a question of saving the planet when you're talking about globally and the discussions that are going on with the governments. But as far as we're concerned, I mean, I'm not going to go into detail. I mean, members will have sort of read the report. There is, a number of grants that we have received, and we're proposing to apply for more grants. I mean, I think we've got to allocate monies for us to present further bids when and as and when they become available. I'm hoping that it's a non-controversial paper, but I put it there and hope that the recommendations will be adopted by council, and of course I'll answer any questions. Thank you, Mayor.
And who is seconding this? Thank you. Yeah, thank you. You can all second it, it doesn't matter. Somebody does. Right, thank you. Now we're into debate. Have we got any questions from Councillor Bretherton?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. It's just a query that I've got on page 111. In the report, it refers to the carbon neutral by the year 2030, but in some instances it refers to the borough, and in other areas it refers to the council estate, assuming that refers to the buildings. When I read the report, I'm sure I saw some comments to say that in order to be fully carbon neutral by 2030, every house in South Ribble would need to remove its gas boiler and replace that with an alternative. I'm just wondering how realistic that is. So just please, just clarification, is it the aim for the borough, every house, or is it the council buildings as in the council estate? Just like some clarification on that. Thank you.
Councillor Titherington.
I think it's always been said, and I think the leader, Councillor Foster, has said on a number of occasions that he makes no apologies for us being ambitious in seeking to achieve carbon neutrality in the borough by 2030. I think it would be impossible for me to commit here that every house is going to not have a boiler by 2030. But the thing is that whatever we do, I mean, we've got to do it. And I mean, I said before, we've got to seize the opportunity where there is funding, because I mean, when you're talking about carbon neutrality, there's a number of things that need to be tackled. And if we're talking about the carbon estate, we need to show leadership as a council. And I mean, within the report, it does refer to the big six. And if we can get them done, then we refer to, other council buildings. But in relation to houses not having boilers, I'm afraid I can't give a response to that this evening.
Yes, Councillor Thurmo.
Basically, I'd just like to thank all the officers for all the hard work they've done. As Vice Chair of the Climate Change Committee, and I know Councillor Martin will agree, they've put an extraordinary amount of work into this, and it's something that we all should vote for. Strange coming from this part, from the debates we've had tonight, but this is something that we all agree on. This is something that we are in the last chance saloon, and that tonight we should agree on this and carry this forward as a council, not as a Labour group, not as Lib Dems, not as a Conservative group. This is not just for my children and my grandchildren. This is for everyone. This is not just for us, it's for the future of the planet. So that's all I've got to say now.
Anybody else? I'm looking. Yes.
Respond to that, because I'm grateful for that contribution, and I'm also pleased to endorse wholeheartedly the work that officers have done on this. I think that you can see from the size of the report, you can imagine the amount of work that's gone into that. So yeah, I'm happy to sort of second that in terms of thanking the officers, and I'm also grateful for the contribution made by the council. Thank you.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to sort of like my view on this as the chair, and I thank my fellow committee member and all committee members for their work they've done on that, and do congratulate the officers for the immensity of the work that they've done. As you know, we've got 160 odd solar panels on the roof. It's not pushing down on us, it's not hurting us in any way. It's generating 2.5k a year plus the feed-in tariffs. As far as getting the borough carbon neutral, that's not just up to us. There's a whole raft of industry and government that can make that happen, and they can make that happen by putting policies in place that promote carbon neutrality. We would never be able to afford that on our own. We rely on the support. There's so many other things that can be done. We have an MP who can help with that, I believe. She's responsible with a constituency for half of the Ribble estuary. We can put seagrass in the Ribble estuary again before we destroyed it with capitalism, before the need for money. So as far as this council is concerned, we're striving to get this council, we're leading by example, and we all should do that. And in our committee, I ask members that they do their petitioning. They petition government, they petition people they know who can make a difference. Lancashire County Council, every other council around us, to work together to try and stop this from happening to our planet. We're part of the problem because we're part of the planet. It's not the planet and us. We're all in it together. We're an appendage of the planet, and we need this planet for us to continue to be that appendage. and failure to act and failure to try is not acceptable. Thank you.
Well said.
Councillor. Anybody else? Looking, I can't see anybody. Nope. No. Well, this has got to go to the vote now.
Thank you, Mayor. There are a number of recommendations listed 5 through 7, paragraphs 5 through 7 of the report. I wouldn't propose to read them all out. Is anyone opposed to the adoption of those recommendations? In the absence of any opposition, Mayor, this is also approved.
Thank you. We'd have been very remiss, would we not, if we had not ever agreed that. We're on number 16 now, aren't we? Yeah, questions to the leader. Questions to the leader of the council. Now, are there any questions? Are there any questions for the leader of the council from any member? I've got a question here from Councillor Bretherton. Do you want me to read it out, or are you going to do that yourself? Yep, okay.
Thank you. I'll not read out the email that was sent to me. That's quite a long email. There was some criticism there of whoever did the work, but to summarise the question from the resident, a resident has written to me to express concern about the abnormal failure rate of the trees planted along the Pavement bypass John Horrocks Way. The vast majority of saplings have not taken root, and in some areas the failure rate is over 90%. The resident believes the reason could be that the contractor did not bed in the trees properly and allowing excess water to the roots. Please, can you explain the likely reason for this failure, and more importantly, what lessons have been learned to ensure similar mistakes are not repeated? Can I just add something to that? The 27,500 trees that have been planted, included in that is any that have been planted on John Horrocks Way as well. Thank you.
Are there any more questions for the leader? Any more? Sorry, Councillor Ogilvie.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. You'll recall at the Cabinet meeting on the 16th of June that both Councillor Moon and myself, as ward councillors, were concerned at the proposed use of the Section 106 monies associated with the development of Buckshaw Village being used for general playground refurbishment across the borough when none was proposed to be spent on Buckshaw Village itself. The minutes from that Cabinet meeting, and I quote, and it's important that you listen to the exact words of this minute, that the leader of the council write to residents of Buckshaw Village explaining the reasons for the decision concerning the Section 106 funding. The meeting was obviously also aired on YouTube for other residents to hear. Could I ask you to confirm if the residents have received that explanation for the 106 expenditure? Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Tomlinson. Councillor Caleb Tomlinson.
Thank you, Mayor. Would the leader agree with me that thanks to the swift action by PC Charlie Bamber and his colleagues in Bamber Bridge at the weekend, 4 machete-wielding thugs were removed from our streets and they averted what could have been a bloodbath? And would he join me giving thanks to our local police force? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Tomlinson. Councillor Turner? No? Okay. Anybody else? Any more questions? The leader? Right, Councillor Foster, would you like to reply?
Thanks, Mayor. I'll do them in reverse order. So, Councillor Tomlinson, clearly, Caleb, I'm really pleased to see the swift action of the police there. Station Road, Bamber Bridge hasn't been the greatest of places in the last 12 months with some tragic events, and I'll happily, on behalf of the council, write to the police and thanking them for their continued swift support and looking after the community. Councillor Ogilvie, there is a response on the way to every single member of the community in Buckshaw and Wordham. You'll see my nice little grid on the front, so you'll be happy, and we'll make sure we drop it through your letterbox too. The good news is clearly as well, and hopefully you'll be supportive of this, is the original Section 106 monies that were required for the the park on Bent Lane weren't required in the end. There was a substantial saving that was generated by the officers when they went through the procurement exercise. And, you know, I think there were seven YouTube people watching that meeting of the Cabinet. Officers reported back to me, of which 5 were councillors and officers. And so the other 2 residents, I'll happily find out and I'll speak to them myself directly, Alan. But as we've said always, and I know the other concern we had is that Councillor Moon, had never put alternative proposals forward to the Cabinet to consider for Buckshaw and Worden, but you're complaining about us using the monies in other areas of the borough. You know, when we're going to continue to use all Section 106 contributions for our residents all around the borough. But the written response, Alan, is on its way. In respect to the trees, I'm now an expert horticulturalist, I think the word is. And I do thank Councillor Bretherton for advance notice of the question. It's always very helpful. We have a choice. We've got the detailed answer. I will give you the brief 2 or 3 lines, Damien, and then this will be emailed out to you, and if you could please pass it on to the member of the public. Basically, Lancashire County Council planted the trees, and planning condition 19 of the consent does require a tree planting and maintenance scheme which runs for at least 10 years. Lancashire County Council considered the failure rate at the last inspection, which was only in June, to be actually 10 to 20%, not the 70 to 90% as you stated at the Cabinet meeting. And no, sorry, it wasn't you, it was your friend and colleague, what's his name? Help me out, Mr. Derbyshire, stated at the Cabinet meeting. We don't recognise a 90% failure rate. However, there is an inspection planned at the end of this month. You'll be glad to know. Our arboriculturalists will be going down there as well. And what I can assure you is, if they are dead, they'll be replaced. That's part of the deal that we have with Lancashire County Council. And then I've just seen down 27,500, and for the life of me, I can't remember what you asked to do. Was it the? There's no trees on there. No, you're trying to fool me there, Keith. Yes, there is a big planting exercise that happened on John Horrocks Way, isn't there, on the far side? Yes.
Does that satisfy you?
Yes, the trees that we planted, I'm assuming South Road Borough Council planted. Did Lancashire County Council plant them on our behalf, or did our people plant them?
On behalf of the residents, Councillor Bretherton, and because we put a planning condition in there that said they had to be planted, so you could argue they planted them for us.
They did the physical planting on our instruction. Jobs are good. Right. Sorry. Oh, Councillor Ogilvie.
Right, thanks, Mayor. Thank you for that response, Councillor Foster. In terms of the written response that's gone out, can I ask, is it this newspaper? Right. This newspaper is not a council newspaper. This is an openly South Ribble Labour political leaflet. It is not what the Cabinet recommendation asked you to do. It does mention playgrounds in here, I'll give you that. But the whole point of your writing was to explain to the residents of Buckshaw why none of the 106 money associated with their development was being spent in their area. Buckshaw is not even mentioned. The word Buckshaw does not appear in this newsletter. There is nothing about 106 money in this newsletter. So it's very disappointing. So, a few questions for you. Do you agree that decisions made and minuted at Cabinet must be complied with in full? Will you now confirm that as council leader and on behalf of the whole of this council, not just the Labour group, on behalf of the whole of the council, as a council leader should, write to our residents on Buckshaw Village and give the promised explanation of why the money was spent in the way it was spent? And finally, as it's not a council newspaper, can you confirm that no officer time or council financial resources were involved in either the creation or the delivery of this newspaper? Thank you.
Councillor Foster.
I really do have to, once again, the Conservative group, challenging the integrity of the officers of this council. I find it absolutely astonishing. I find it astonishing you'd ask that. Of course, no officers or any resource of this council is being used in the production of the newspaper. And I'm glad you've got it, Councillor Ogilvie. I'm glad you've read it, because what it'll show you is how much this council has done during the pandemic for our communities. There's more there in that paper than you lot achieved in 12 years, and we are absolutely proud of what we've managed to achieve. I would suggest as well, again, Councillor Yates last, because isn't life just everything, isn't it just a joke, isn't it? Isn't it just a joke? Beg your pardon? Thank you. Councillor Ogilvie, I undertook to contact the residents, Buckshaw and Worthing, and we have. Thank you.
Is there anybody?
Explained which is specifically in the minutes.
Now, can we just stop a minute? Now, let's lose our tempers. That is not what we're here for. We're here to discuss and debate and not throw stones. So, Councillor Ogilvie, would you like to repeat what you just said?
So the key point was that an explanation to the residents had to be given. No explanation appears in that newspaper.
Thank you. And I'm under the impression from what I've just heard is that you are going to contact the residents. You presume it's done. I can do no more. Is there anybody else wants to say anything? Sorry. Sorry. Councillor Trafford, did you just indicate you wanted to speak? Sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. Would the leader agree with me that when we're in a meeting where on one agenda item we've discussed bullying and harassment, in the same agenda item we've heard about homophobia, on a later agenda item from the same group we've heard about misogyny? I'll add racism, blatant racism to the mix as well. There's plenty of evidence for that as well. So then come into a public meeting, on the same meeting where we discuss these issues, it takes some brass neck to question the integrity of the officers whose expertise are repeatedly denied, and is part of the reason why we're in this mess, and to question the integrity of the Labour group for the leaflet produced. Would you agree with me that that takes quite a lot of brass neck in order to do that? Thank you.
Mr. Foster.
Continued, of course I agree. I think the continued challenging of the officers of this council by the members of the Conservative group has gone too far now. They've been warned and warned about this, and the external auditors also warned them about this. Challenge the political administration, stop challenging the officers' integrity. Thank you.
Councillor Foster. Councillor Ogilvie. Can I just remind you...
A point of personal explanation.
Yeah, can I just remind you there's a question to the leader and not a debate, but what would you like to say?
I'm disappointed at the implication that a simple question of where the funding came from has been placed on me criticising the officers. There was no intention in my words to make that point whatsoever, and I have every faith in our officers that they will do the correct thing.
Thank you, Councillor Ogilvie. Are there any more questions for the leader? No? No, that's it. Right, well, we'll move on then to the next cabinet member, and that will be Councillor Mick Titherington for Health and Wellbeing. Are there any questions for Councillor Titherington? I'm looking. I'm not seeing. Sorry. Matthew Tomlinson, Councillor.
Thank you, and hopefully this will result in a less fractious debate and response. I wonder if the cabinet member would join me in congratulating Leyland Warriors Rugby League Club. Certainly the Leyland members will be aware of the growth of that club in recent years. Indeed, since we offered them a long lease on the land, they've grown beyond measure. Members might not be aware, but last week I think it was on Thursday, Wigan Warriors, sorry, I apologise, Leyland Warriors Rugby League Club's wheelchair team competed in the national final of wheelchair rugby league against the might of Leeds Rhinos, one of the great rugby league sides, and it was broadcast live on Sky. It was a fantastic game. As rugby league, I would say this is always a fantastic game. Sadly, the final hurdle proved a little too much, and Leeds Rhinos ended up being worthy winners of the trophy. But to have Leeds Rhinos versus Leyland Warriors live on Sky is an enormous achievement, and really justifies all the work that this council, or helps to justify, or further justifies all the work this council has done over the years to help that club grow and prosper. I'm sure that the Cabinet Member for Health and Wellbeing is as pleased as I am, and indeed it might be more appropriate for him to ask you as the Mayor to write on behalf of the council to congratulate the club and wish them every success in the future.
Rugby players, yeah. And my son's a rugby player and he plays for Warriors. So yeah, would you like to reply?
Yeah, fantastic news, and I feel a bit guilty that I didn't know about that until Councillor Tomlinson reminded me. But it is a spectacular achievement, and I'm sure the whole council will join in congratulating them. I think it is something that the Leyland and Farrington Hub can pat themselves on the back in being in partnership with helping to develop that club, you know, down in Moss Side, and it's just a fabulous achievement. So can I ask you, Mayor, to join with me to express on behalf of the council our congratulations to the Leyland Warriors team for well, sadly they fell at the last hurdle, but nevertheless, it's a fantastic achievement.
It's wonderful. I will make a special effort. I shall make a special effort to go into another field for fun. So, perhaps I shouldn't have said that, should I? There you go. Are there any more questions for our Cabinet Member for Health and Wellbeing? Any more? No. Right, we move on, moving swiftly on. Cabinet Member for Community, Social Justice and Wealth Building. And any questions for Councillor Bielensky-Gelder? No, you're getting off lightly tonight, Aniela. Well done. No, good. We will move on to Councillor Matthew Tomlinson, Finance and Property and Assets. Does anybody want to ask Councillor Tomlinson anything? I think he's been asked quite a lot tonight, haven't you? Have you not finished yet? No. Right, we move on. Is that everybody? No, next one. Just let me turn my paper over. Is it Councillor Evans? Is it? Yep. Councillor Evans, Planning, Business Support and Regeneration. Are there any questions? Yes, Councillor Green.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening. Members of the council will be aware that it's the Taste of Leyland event on Saturday afternoon, which from previous events of a similar nature have been very successful, but this one in particular is an opportunity to bring people back into Leyland, and I think indeed it's received some external funding in order to support it for that very purpose, and it's something which the council is doing, and I wholeheartedly commend, and let's hope it's a successful event. My concern, however, that for that event to take place, we need to clear Eckroyd Street car park and allow any car parking charges to be removed for the day. And as such, we've had a decision which has been taken by Councillor Evans last week for that to be put into effect. That decision hasn't gone live yet and was subject to a scrutiny call-in. Now, I hope it hasn't been called into scrutiny, but I'm just wondering why the decision was taken so late, and if Councillor Evans can explain the reason for the late decision, and also If it has, or if it was to be called into scrutiny and then it couldn't take place in the way that was anticipated, what Councillor Evans' alternative plans are in terms of staging the event in 2.5 days from now. Thanks.
Are there any more questions to Councillor Evans? Right, Councillor Evans?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Green, for your question. I signed that decision off as soon as I got it. What had happened is we wanted to use Balfour Court, but Balfour Court is privately owned, and the owner of Balfour Court has decided not to let us use it. So we've had to transfer across to Aircloud Street, and the savings for the day, the losses for the day is somewhere in the region of £70. So it's not a big issue to us because it's not a very well used car park. But yeah, we signed it off as fast as we got it, and well, it's up to scrutiny now. I hope that answers your question. Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, Councillor Green.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for the response, Councillor Evans. However, the report was written by the officer on the 2nd of September, and the report then wasn't signed off by yourself till the 15th. So what actually happened in that period in between, and why was it not signed off at an earlier date to ensure that we had the facility available for the use for the excellent event on Saturday? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't know the answer to that. I never noticed the September the 2nd date, but I will find out and come back to you. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay with that? Councillor Green? Good. No more questions, Councillor? Right. Right, we are now on item 18, and this is the exclusion of the press and public. So, I have to, it's for decision as well. Can I please ask the Leader of the Council to propose that the press and the public are excluded from the meeting? Yeah? Right, is it seconded? Can somebody just second that? Yes, thank you. Sorry? Yeah. Sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. I propose that the agenda item for this, the removal of press and the public, is refused. Agenda item 19 should be discussed in the public domain, as the figures quoted in the budget are already in the public domain, and this item 19 would be just an adjustment of those figures and should be in the public domain, and referring to the Town and Country Planning General Regulations Act 1992. The document does not contain any contractual issues, but the issue of increasing the budget to develop the Mackenzie Arms site in Bamber Bridge. Thank you.
Right, do we need to?
Yeah, sorry, as the proposer of this, I am proposing to accept the statutory officer's recommendations, which we are always encouraged to do. I'm aware that the monitoring officer has looked at this very closely, and because there are significant financial challenges, shall we say, that we're facing, and that Councillor Matthew Tomlinson is going to go through the detail, if we debate that in public, it could infer an advantage to third parties. Contracts haven't been signed yet, therefore we must deal with everything in strictest of confidence until contracts are signed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. So we need to have, go on Chris, I'm taking my blight from you now.
Yeah, Councillor Foster is quite correct. This report has been considered by the legal team, in fact myself, and I supported the recommendation for it being confidential. The increase in budget, if we start going public prior to procurement exercises taking place with how much money we're going to spend as a council, you will find that the bids will strangely come in very, very close to that sum of money, and it becomes increasingly difficult to demonstrate value for money under procurement exercises and best value. In other words, people will charge you what you have to spend. If they don't know what you have to spend, then they will charge you what the work is worth, and that is the reason that the matter is recommended to be confidential.
Thank you. So I go back to the exclusion of press and public. We have to vote on this. We have to have a vote on this.
Okay, so there's been a motion to exclude press and public on the next agenda item. I'll go through perhaps well, firstly, I'll just say, because I've spoken, is there still remaining opposition to going into private session on this matter? People's will accept it. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. In that case, Mayor, we can move into private session. Yeah. Thank you.
Going into private session. So members, I'm sorry, Mrs. Metcalfe, you've got to go home. You've got to go home.
We do that first.
Thank you for.